Welcome to episode 7 of Duties of the Heart. We're in the unity of God, the first gate. We last episode we got up to number 5 of the 10 chapters that basically describe the unity of God or argue towards the unity of God, and we're going to do chapter 6 today. But just to recap, chapter 5 finished off with Rabbi Bachya. He made 3 premises that we can deduce that the world has a creator. Number 1, that nothing makes itself. Nothing can just produce itself out of nothing. Or rather, like the universe could not make itself. And premise number 2, causes are limited in number. Since their number is limited, they must have a first cause before which there is no other. So cause and effect is a series that we see all the time, every day, in everything, and something must have been the first push. If there is cause and effect, as we see all around us, something must have done that, and something must have created the first cause to create the first effect. And number 3, the premise number 3, anything that is composite or made of parts has to have been brought into existence. And these 3 premises were established by Rabbi Bachya in the last episode, but we're going to move forward to chapter 6 and talk about intelligent design of the universe as a proof of a creator. So he continues, how can we make use of the above mentioned pre-mentioned premises to demonstrate the existence of the creator? When we observe this world, we find that it is composite, made up of many parts, and that not one of its parts was not fashioned and ordered. For we perceive with our senses and minds that the world is like a well-built house that is fully furnished. The skies above serve as the ceiling, the earth is spread out like a carpet, the stars are arranged like lamps, and all objects are stored inside like treasures, everything ready for its intended use. Man is like the master of the house, who makes use of everything inside it. The different kinds of plants are provided for his good, and the various animals serve to benefit him, as King David said, and his quotes from Tehillim, chapter 8, verses 7 to 9. You have made him master over the works of your hands, placed all things at his feet, all sheep and cattle, also the beasts of the fields, the birds of heavens and the fish of the sea, that which moves along ocean paths. The sequence of sunrise and sunset determines the times of day and night, and the solar ascension and declension produce cold and heat, summer and winter, the different seasons with their blessings, repeating over and over in an unbroken uniform cycle, as it is written, who commands the sun and it does not shine, who blocks off the stars? That's Eov 9 verse 7. And also from Tehillim chapter 104, you make it dark and it is night. The circuit of the spheres in their various orbits, the stars and planets, racing along calculated courses at predetermined speeds, never deviating or changing, all these were intended for man's benefit and welfare, as King Solomon said in Koheles 3 verse 11. He has made everything right in its time. He has also set the world in their heart. And also from Kohelet 3 verse 1, there is a time for everything, a moment for all concerns under the heavens. The composite and structured nature of all this is apparent as a whole and in each of the parts. When we examine plants and animals, we find them to be composed of 4 elements: fire, air, water and earth. These elements are distinct and incompatible. We cannot join them in a natural combination. For some change one into the other, and some are incompatible with the other. When we try to combine them, they quickly break down and change form. Their combination is wrought by nature, however, is sound and enjoying one, until its end comes. Some philosophers were of the opinion that the heavenly spheres, stars, and higher beings are made up of the elements of fire. King David made a similar statement in Tehillim 104 verse 4, who makes winds his messengers, flaming fire his servants. This supports the view just mentioned, and not that of Aristotle, who thought that what the heavens are made of is a fifth element. Since all things that exist come from the elements and are all combinations of them, and since we know that these elements, because of their disagreement, do not mix on their own, nor do they combine by their nature, it strikes our minds and we are convinced in our souls that what unites them is something other than them. What binds them is outside of them, and what combines them forcibly and against their nature is their Creator, who planned and arranged their union. So I would just like to stop here and comment upon the four elements idea. We know that this book was written in the 11th century, and the science of the time was basically stated that everything in the universe is made up of four elements. But let's look at this concept of four elements. In science, the four elements parallel the four primary states of matter, which are the solid state, liquid state, gas state, and plasma. Some people call plasma energy. But they also parallel the four dimensions of space-time. Space is what we see around us is 3 dimensions, and if you add 1 dimension of time, you get 4 dimensions. There were also 4 fundamental forces in physics: the gravitational force, electromagnetical, strong nuclear, and weak nuclear. And also, again, echoing this set of 4, there were 4 main particles: the proton, the neutron, the electron, and the photon. And they are all governed by 4 fundamental mathematical operations: plus, minus, multiplication, and division. So it's funny how there are a lot of parallels between every kind of octave of life and a set of 4. Also in our kind of typical life forms, you could say earth, water, air, and fire, which are the 4 elements mentioned by Rabbi Bachya, could mirror the earth is the inanimate, like soil. There's water is plants, air is animal, and fire is human. And if you take it one level further, we'll look at the commentary of Marpei Lenefesh, and he writes, and I quote, "And even the supernal realms of angels and mystical worlds are also composites from the 4 elements, or 4 spiritual elements. They are composed from the 4 letters of the tetragrammaton, Yud K Vov K, which is the source of the 4 spiritual and the 4 physical elements. And there is nothing, whether in the upper realms or in our world, which is not composed from the 4 letters of the tetragrammaton and the Ein Sof, as written in Sha'arei Kedusha, Part 3, Gate 1. So I just wanted to mention that, just to give a little bit of clarification regarding the 4 elements, as it's going to feature widely in the following chapters. When we examine the 4 elements themselves, we find that they are combined from matter and form, which correspond to substance and accident. Their matter is that primal matter which is the origin of the 4 elements, their original substance. Their form is that the first universal form which is the root of all forms, whether essential or accidental, such as heat and cold, wetness and dryness, heaviness and lightness, motion and rest, and the like. Composition and combination are evident in the world as a whole, and in all of its parts, in its roots and branches, in its simple elements and complex beings, in that which is above and which is below. It follows from our premises, then, that the whole world was brought into existence, since it has been demonstrated that whatever is composite must have been brought into existence. We are bound by logic to believe that the world was brought into existence. This being the case, and since it is impossible for a thing to have made itself, it must be that the world has a maker who started it and brought it into existence. Since it has been demonstrated that there cannot be an infinite series of causes, it follows that the world must have had a beginning, before which there was no other beginning, a first cause without a cause before it. It is he who formed the world, bringing it into existence out of nothing. As it says in Yeshayahu 44:24, I am God who made all things. I alone stretched out the heavens. By myself I spread out the earth. And also from Eof 26:7, he stretched out the north over empty space, suspends the globe over nothing. And going, also quoting again Yeshayahu 44:6, he is the Creator, may he be exalted, whom we have searched for and directed our thoughts and minds to find. He is the Eternal One who is without beginning, the First One whose eternity is without end. As it says in Scripture, I am the first and I am the last. And also quoting from Yeshayahu, I, God, am the first and it is I who will be at the end. Now the next section, Rabbi Bahya is going to talk about the concept of a world having a designer. So this intelligent design, just to perhaps have a little commentary on contemporary concepts of this fine-tuned universe. This is arguments that they look at the fundamental physical constants, the relative strength of nuclear forces, electromagnetism and gravity between fundamental particles, as well as the ratio of masses of such particles. Intelligent design proponents argue that if any of these values were even slightly different, the universe would be dramatically different, making it impossible for many chemical elements and features of the universe, such as galaxies, to form. Therefore, proponents argue an intelligent designer of life was needed to ensure that the requisite features were present to achieve that particular outcome. That's a contemporary examination of intelligent design. But now we go back to Rabbi Bachya's interpretation. And he continues, there are men who say that the world came into existence by chance, without a creator who caused it and formed it. I find this rather astonishing. How could any rational human being in his right mind entertain such a notion? If one had held such a view, were to hear someone make a similar claim about a revolving water wheel, one that is used to irrigate a section of a field or garden, that it came about without the design of craftsmen who invested effort in putting it together, constructing it and supplying all its parts so that it perform its intended function, he would be amazed by such a statement. Speak slightingly of the one who made it, consider him a total ignoramus, and be quick to expose him and reject his claim. Now, if such a claim is rejected when it is made about a petty and insignificant little water wheel, which can be made with limited skill and serves a small plot of land, how can one allow himself to make the same claim about the great celestial wheel, which encompasses the entire earth and all of its creatures, which reflects an intelligence so awesome that its essence is beyond the grasp of all human understanding, which serves the well-being and the entire earth and everything in it? How can one say that it all came into being without the intent of a designer, without the planning of an omnipotent intelligence? We all know that when there is no designer's intent, no trace of wisdom or proficiency will be found. Surely you would agree that if a man were to accidentally spill some ink onto a blank piece of paper, it is impossible that it would take the shape of orderly writing and legible lines, as are written with a pen. If a person were to show us a page of orderly writing that could only have been written with a pen, and said that the ink had spilled out onto the page and had on its own taken the shape of written characters, we would be quick to deny it to his face, as this could not have come about without a purposeful designer. Now, since this appears to us to be an impossibility in regard to written characters, which are merely products of convention, how can one say, in regard to something more subtle in its art, more difficult in its achievement, and of boundless depth, that it is without the intent of a designer, without the wisdom of an omnipotent intelligence? All that we have cited in demonstrating the existence of the Creator from the perspective of his works is sufficient for anyone who will understand and admit the truth. It is also sufficient to answer those who say that the world is eternal and to refute their contentions. Know this well. And that concludes the sixth chapter of the unity of gods. And it's quite interesting. We must, we can look at the incredible complexity of the universe, and how if any of the factors, any of the variables were even slightly off, that it's almost impossible that the universe would exist. And that would seem to suggest a creator, and a creator with great masterful technique of putting together the universe with all its complexity and running it in its beautiful way. How Rabbi Bahya describes the celestial cycles and our tides. The moon is the perfect distance from the earth, absolutely perfect distance from the earth in order to create the tides. And without the tides, would we have the weather? It's interesting. It seems like everything is like a clock. It's like clockwork, how everything runs. And we're looking on a grand scale. But you also look within ourselves, within ourselves and our cells. And we look at the processes that go on. If anything goes wrong, everything goes drastically wrong. How everything is kept in check and runs so smoothly, sometimes we don't appreciate that, even within our own bodies. How our kind of body politics are perfect inside, how all the processes work perfectly. Only when we get ill do we realize sometimes how precious this beautiful balance that God has maintained in our bodies and in the universe in general. So I look forward to continuing these 10 chapters on the unity of God in the next episode.